Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Brian, Mr. Smith, Kitchen, as always. And today I thought we'd do some baking, like we do every week. And but I know last week I said we were going to do another bundt cake. Kind of lied. We're not doing a bundt cake, but we are doing a pecan style cake, and this one's a butter pecan cake. It's got that traditional butter pecan flavor like you would get with the ice cream. If this recipe turns out like any other butter pecan cake I've had, or pecan, depending on who you talk to, and it's got a nice buttery cream cheese icing, and it just sounds amazing. And I had forgotten that I even had this recipe. It was on our Facebook page, Mr. Smith's Kitchen Facebook. It's a group. You're more than welcome to check it out. It's a public group. Anybody can join. I don't ask any questions. I don't even really, in some ways, care if you're a robot. Although if I find out you're a robot, I'll probably kick you out of the group. But this is a 3-layer cake. It's only 8 inches round, so it's a little smaller than the cakes we normally make, but only by an inch. And with it being 3 layers, I think it'll be quite amazing. If you are new to my channel, this is your first video, welcome. I'm glad you stopped by. Sorry, I got a thing going on. Just all kinds of nonsense. But anyhow, that's whatever. It's a moot point, really. If you are, like I said, if you are new to my channel, welcome. I'm glad you stopped by. I hope you get something out of this video and check out some of my other videos. We got a lot of them to choose from. A lot of dinners, a lot of baked goods, and some other odds and end videos along the way. If you're returning, thank you. That means you got something out of at least one of my videos, and you want to come back and see what else I'm doing. And I never take that for granted. Time is something that's precious. You never get back, and the fact that you're willing to spend a little bit of it with me is amazing. New subscribers, you know, we are growing. We slowed down a little bit, but that's all right. That's all right. You can't gain subscribers every day, right? I mean, I wish you could, but you know, all the same. The only way to make that happen is if you like, share, you know, subscribe, and that gets us all out in the algorithm and helps our neighborhood to grow, gets us out into other people's feeds. You know, we can grow our community of, you know, good neighbors and conversation through food. So that being said, we're gonna get down here to the counter. As always, I will give you your measurements in cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, plus grams. That way everybody can play along, unless there happens to be a third one I don't know about, measurement I don't know about, but I'm sure there is. And if there is, let me know down in the comments. They're always welcomed. So anyhow, let's get down here to the counter and we'll start baking a cake. All right, hold on for me 1 second. Okay, we're down here on the counter, and if you're new to my channel, you're pretty much looking at my entire kitchen at the moment, but we are making progress in the basement. I hope to show you that probably tomorrow. And I'll be shooting a video for it this evening and doing some more work down there after we bake our cake. It's an ongoing process. I'm not in a huge rush, and it'll probably slow down even more as we go outside to do more work in the garden now that it's starting to warm up. Got about another week or two, and we'll be in the garden. I already got my my vegetable plants started. So anyhow, things you will need: a couple bowls minimum. Got one here, one here. I'm using a stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, you could just easily use a hand mixer, and you'll just need your hand mixer and a bowl, a large bowl and a medium bowl. Another thing you'll need, always, scale. I'll get off my high horse on this in just one quick second, but I always say you need a scale, and the reason for that is like flour. Say this, like this particular recipe calls for 3 cups of flour. Well, if your flour gets smashed down in your measuring cup, it is going to be more than 3 cups by the time it's said and done. So, and you don't want that to happen. You want exactly 3 cups, because if you put too much flour in, your cake becomes dry. It's not moist. Same with sugar is not quite as bad, but anything that's powdery, you could run into that problem. So scale, couple bowls, mixer of some sort, scale, and then we are going to take, first things we're going to do, we're going to take 3 8-inch pans. We're going to grease them, whether it be with butter, shortening, whatever your preference is. The flour spray, which I've yet to get some and try. And after I floured it and buttered it, I put it in a 8-inch round piece of parchment paper that I cut out myself, and I did that for all 3 pans. After that, we're going to turn our oven on 350 degrees, which I've already done. I turned it on because the pecans we're going to use, I roasted them, right? And then I cut them up. But we'll get to those here in a second. So we've got 3 cups, 360 grams of all-purpose flour in here. To that, I am going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which I have in here. Sorry, I have 3 different things in here. They're all white. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, which is 4 grams. A half a teaspoon of baking soda, which is 2 grams. 1 teaspoon of salt, which is 4 grams. And I'm going to throw that in here with my flour, just like such. And then the last thing we're going to put in here, we're doing our dry ingredients first in the mixer, because this is a high ratio cake, much like the cake we did last week. It has more sugar than flour, so we can do it backwards. We can do all our dry ingredients, we can put our sugars in there, and then we'll just simply mix up our egg, dairy, and vanilla in a separate bowl. But anyhow, we got our flour, our baking soda, baking powder, and salt in there. I have 1 cup of heavily packed 220 grams of brown sugar. It's light brown sugar. And I have 1 cup 200 grams of regular all-purpose sugar, and we're just going to put that in there, just like such. And then we'll go ahead and turn our mixer on and get that blended up. It's going to take about 30. I'm going to let this run for about 30 seconds, and I'm going to let it just run on low or stir. If you're using a hand mixer, low. Stir if you're using a stand mixer, at least this style of stand mixer. Okay, we got that mixed up. Oh, hold on for me 1 second. I got somebody hollering my name. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that delay. I'm back. So anyhow, we got our dry goods mixed together. So the next thing we need to do is get our wet ingredients mixed together. Medium bowl. Let me bring you down just a hair so you can see what I'm doing here. One of these days I'll figure out a good camera angle. Well, when we get our kitchen done, we'll have all kinds of good stuff in there. So I've got 2 large eggs, right? 100 grams, and I've already whisked them up. I didn't have to, I guess. I could have just let it ride with 2 large eggs, put them in the bowl, but I mean, either way. Get those in there. It'll save me from dirtying a bowl. And to our 2 large eggs, we will add 1.5 cups of buttermilk, which is 354 milliliters. We'll go ahead and get that dumped in there, just like such. And you want, much like your eggs and your buttermilk, you want those at room temperature. Remember, all dairy should be at room temperature. The butter is going to be a tricky one when we go to put it in there. And then I've got 1.5 teaspoons or 6 grams of vanilla. You know, and make sure you use a baker's vanilla. Maybe you don't have it, you know, or you can't find it. That's fine. You can use any vanilla you have or you like. But the difference between a regular 100% vanilla and a baking vanilla is designed for the flavor to stay when you bake with it, or cook with it when you heat it up. A standard pure vanilla or even an extra, an imitation vanilla, the flavor can disappear. But we're gonna get that whisked up. And now the only thing we have left to do, and this is something I did ahead of time, I would recommend you do this ahead of time also, is take care of your butter. Now, we browned our butter. And what I did was I cooked it down in a saucepan until it was melted, and it'll bubble, it'll crack, but if you can see the bottom of it down there, it's got little brown bits. So, and that's what I want. I want it to be brown. You want it to also be completely cooled. Not so cold that it's, re-solidified, but you don't want this to be hot, or the minute you put your batter, your wet ingredients in there, it's going to start cooking your eggs. So let it cool down to just a hair less than warm. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start our mixer back on stir or low. And we're just going to go ahead and start putting this in there. And what that does is that really will bring out the flavors in that butter, you know, by browning it. Now you don't want those bits to be black, you want them to be brown. If they're black, and you'll know because you'll start to smell it, you don't want burnt butter. You just want it to be browned. So we'll go ahead and get that. We're going to let that run in there for just about maybe a minute or so. Let it get nice and crumbly. Now if you remember last week, we didn't melt the butter, we just put it in and ran with it. And it's because in this case, we want that brown butter taste. That's part of butter pecan. Okay, so we got our butter is in there. We're got kind of a, not a cornmeal look, but everything's coated. That's what you're looking for. You want everything to be coated. And we're going to double check real quick. Just take our spatula off. And yeah, that way you know everything gets touched by everything else. And it never hurts to mix your stuff up just a hair. Alright, so, I mean, we're almost done, making the cake batter. It's kind of cool. Put that back on. We'll get that back down there. I'm going to turn this back on low, no higher than 2 on my mixer. And we're going to pour about half of this batter in there. Alright? So we put half our batter in there and we let it incorporate, right? We let it mix in. And now, I mean, you can see we're looking more, not so much like granules as we are a true batter. But what we want to do real quick is get in here and give our bowl a good scrape. And we'll do this again after we put the other half in. But all we have left to do is put the other half in, and then we can put the batter in the pans. But we want to make sure everything got touched, right? All the kids are playing together. If not, you'll have dry patches. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. I did read that in one of the recipes I was looking at. It's okay if you got a few lumps and bumps in there, but you want to try to get it as good as you can, so to speak. So we'll go ahead, turn this back on, and we'll put our other half of our batter in there. All right, so we are good and incorporated. We're nice and smooth, just like a cake batter should be. Not too much air. That makes me happy. So the last thing we need to do before we put it in the pans is we're going to get rid of this mixer real quick because I need counter space. Just like such. Ooh. And we're going to take our pecans that I was talking about earlier. There is a cup and a half, 150 grams of pecans. Now, I weighed this before I crushed them up. Okay? I weighed them. They were whole in halves. Weighed it at 150 grams, and then I put them on a pan. My oven was at 350 degrees, and I stuck them in there for about 4 or 5 minutes. And what that does is it brings out the oils and the flavors. So I got those chopped up, and then I just chopped them up literally with my meat mallet. We're going to put those in there and leave them in a pile, just like that. I'm kidding. Do not do that. I mean, you can if you want to, but that would be kind of silly. We'll take our spatula, and we're just going to mix those, stir those in real quick. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be pretty. Just like that. Alright, so we got that. Now, let me grab my scale and the other pans, the pans we're going to use, and when I come back, we'll go ahead and get them poured into the pans. Alright, be right back. Okay, so, we got our scale, got our pan. Go ahead and turn our scale on there. That way we're good. This is where a scale comes in real handy because we got to divide this batter into 3. Now, I mean, you can't eyeball it, but I like to use my scale. That way I know that they're evening up. They bake even. You don't want to run the risk of it baking uneven. So I'll just put a little bit in each pan, and that way I know I've got a nice even amount. And when I come back, I will tell you what each amount was. Be right back. Okay, I got them all measured out. They're about 520 grams in each. Right, so now we just want to make sure we're good and smooth on the top and even. That'll help with doming. Now there's some people out there that use cake pan straps, and with there you wet them down, and they're basically just a cloth strap you wrap around the outside of your cake pan, and after you wet them, and what it does, it helps to control the evenness of the heat in them. I don't use them, and for the most part I've had really good success of not having things dome, and I like to think it's just because I make them even. Alright, so we'll go ahead, get that there. I know everybody's going, oh my god, you just touched the batter. It's okay. My hands are clean, and this is for us. So we got it set at 350 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and get these in here. My rack is in the center of the oven. Right? Now let's say your oven may not be big enough to hold 3 pans. That's okay if it's not. Go ahead and do your 2 pans up and just simply cover your bowl that has your cake mix in it and with saran wrap or something to keep the air from getting to it, and wait until these first 2 cakes are done, and then you can do your 3rd one. This batter will hold. So how long are we cooking it for, or baking it for? We don't cook baked goods, we bake them, right? That's why they're called baked goods. I am going to do 30 minutes. This recipe called for 30 minutes, so I'm going to do, I put the timer on for 30 minutes. I'm going to set it at 25. I'm going to say 30-35 minutes. We'll toothpick test it just like we do all cakes. You'll pull it out, put your toothpick in the center, pull it out. It should come out mostly clean, a little bit of crumb, but no batter, right? And then if you touch the top, it should be spongy, it should bounce back. But that being said, let me go ahead and get these baked, and when I come back, we will pull them out of the oven and toothpick test them and check for sponginess. Alright, I'll see you here in just 1 millisecond. Okay, timer's going off. Let's pull these bad boys out and give them a check. Of course, in all that time I did not once get out a toothpick. That's alright. So we'll pull one out to start with. We'll shut it all the way. That way we don't overbake in case we are. Just happen to have a skewer sitting right here, so we'll go ahead and poke that through. Looking good. So I'll go ahead and pull the other 2 out, and then we'll poke the other 2, and I'll show you what they look like. Get those out. Now, I don't think I mentioned when I put these in the oven, you want to leave about 1 inch or so of space, 2 inches if you can, to allow for air to circulate around them, right? But we'll go ahead and get these other 2 poked, and as you can see, there's nothing on that skewer at all. I could have probably actually gone a little less time on these, maybe 28 minutes or whatever, but 30 is okay. They still feel really good. And I'll go ahead and give them a touch. They're spongy, just like we want them. So I'll go ahead and turn the oven off. We're done. Now all I gotta do, I'm gonna let these cool for 10 minutes, and when I come back, we will take them out of the pan. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so we've been 10 minutes, and now I'm gonna take an offset spatula. When you can use a knife. And I'm just gonna make sure my edges are not connected to the pan, which they shouldn't be if we did it right. And let me show you this real quick. I'll show you on another one, depending on how long I can hold it. But if you notice, it's come off the edges. So we just want to make sure that they're really off the edges is all I'm doing. And we'll get the cooked flour off of there. See how it slides real easy around? That means we're not stuck to anything. Do this third one. There we are. So we're in good shape there. Now all we need to do is flip these bad boys over like such. We're going to go ahead and take the parchment paper off of them. like that. We'll flip it back over, set it down. That's nice. And then wash, rinse, repeat. Here, we'll look at this one real quick so you can see the bottom of it. I can't hold it very long, but it's because it's warm. But see how nice that is, and it's moist, and you know, you can't beat that. But before we can ice anything, we gotta let these bad boys completely cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and let these cool, and then when I come back, we'll make the icing, and we will finish making our cake. All right, I'll be back in 1 second. So we let our cakes cool. Got them sitting out in the dining room, and now we're just gonna make our icing. Get this bad boy iced, and we will be ready to go. So let's go ahead and get back down to the counter, and we will work on some icing. All right, hold on for me 1 second. Okay, we are down here at the counter. So this icing is kind of straightforward. Although I don't know if it's more of a cream cheese icing versus a buttercream icing, because it's got a pretty hefty blend of both. But what we're going to do to start with is we're going to take 1.5 cups or 342 grams of butter, 3 sticks of butter, and we're going to take 6 ounces of cream cheese, almost a full block. And I'm personally, makes me crazy when they don't use a full block. You know, even a half a block is good, but 6 ounces is such an odd number. But that's all right. But you know, we're going to give it a try anyhow, and we're going to put that into our mixer. Right? To this, we're going to add some brown sugar. We're going to add 1/3 cup, 66 grams of brown sugar. We're going to pop that in there. We're going to add a teaspoon, I'm sorry, a 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. I use kosher salt if you are newer to my channel. Now with kosher salt, it usually comes in a coarse grain. If you use kosher salt or decide that's what you want to use, I think that's the best salt for baking, but you can use any salt you like. Try to smash it up. It always comes coarse grain, and man oh man does it just really, inevitably somebody's going to get a piece of salt in their mouth and they're going to be like, oh, I taste salt. And it's a kind of, in my thought, is kind of embarrassing, but I mean, to each their own. And then the last thing I'm going to add to this before we mix it together is 1.5 teaspoons, 6 grams of vanilla. This is the first icing recipe I've ever done where they kind of put all the ingredients in one fell swoop. But what we're going to do is, first we're going to plug in our mixer. Oh, there we are. And we're just going to mix this all together. Alright, we started out on low, but we want to get this all creamed and blended so it's pretty much light and fluffy, just like any of our other icings. Okay, so we are nice, smooth, and creamy. Almost like a mashed potato, as you can see. That's the way it should be. They and I don't think I just mentioned this a second ago, but you want all your cream cheese and your butter at not necessarily room temperature, but softened. And there is a difference if you didn't know. So softened is, it hasn't gone above 70 degrees, 69 degrees. But that's what you're looking at right there, because you still want it to be rather cool. Or not rather cool, but you don't want it to be really, really soft like room temperature. So just a hair colder than room temperature. I know that's almost impossible to kind of grasp, at least it was for me. But, you know, like when I first started this mixer, you heard it get a little clunky, and the butter didn't disappear right away. Well, I don't know if you can see that, but it was a little clunky. That's because the butter was still cool. It wasn't quite room temperature. But to this, we are going to add 4.5 cups. It's 4.5. 4.5 cups or 562 grams of powdered sugar. And I'm only going to add it a cup at a time and incorporate it. Mostly because we just don't want a big mess all over the place, and it will be a mess. We're going to start this on the lowest setting possible until it gets a little incorporated. If not, it'll poof powdered sugar right up in our face. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in there, and then we've only got one more ingredient left to do, and we'll be able to ice our cake. Alright, be right back. So we'll go ahead and get that shut off. Flip the switch. we're just going to give it a good scrape. Now, about every other cup, I stopped, I scraped down my bowl, the sides of my bowl. That way we make sure everything gets mixed, right? We want everybody playing together, just like always. So we'll go ahead and give this one more good mix. And right now, we're at the consistency that this would be good for decorating. I mean, it's got a good stiff peak to it and all that good stuff, but it's maybe a little too stiff for icing, right? I mean, it could, depending on how you like it, you could stop right here, but I'm not, for two reasons. A, I think that's a little thick for icing, but the instructions for this particular frosting called for one more ingredient, and that is 1.5 tablespoons, or I'm sorry, 1 tablespoon, 20 milliliters of heavy cream. And we just want to put it in there like such. And then the recipe calls for me to turn this on high speed, so you want to put your mixer on high speed for 5 seconds. All right, we are done. That whole whopping 5 seconds. So we want to go ahead, we're done making our icing. I'll go ahead and get this scraped off and cleaned up, and when I come back, we can start icing cakes. All right, I'll see you here in 1 second. All right, got everything kind of cleaned up, got our cake out, got my on a board. Yeah, I find these boards are a lifesaver, and if you don't have a turntable and you make a lot of cakes, I highly recommend one. Now, we have a couple options here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it is slightly domed. I mean, it's not horrible, but it is slightly domed. So we have a couple options here. We could just cut that even, which I'm not going to, or we can go ahead and set the cakes together so that way you have a flat side on top, which is what we're going to do. So the first thing we need to do is just grab some of our icing, and we're going to put it here in the middle. Now, the reason why I used the icing recipe that came with this cake versus just using like my own cream cheese icing, which I think is what I would do, was because with a recipe, your icing, the icing recipe that comes with it is usually a proper amount, and that's what you want. So all we're going to do is just spread this out, and it's okay if it goes to the edge. Won't hurt nothing. Alright, get this spread out to the edges. Yeah, and if you don't go all the way to the edge, that's okay, because you can fill in the gaps as you go, so to speak. And then, of course, you can make it as thick or as thin as you like, right? I mean, there's no rule that says this can't be a ½ inch deep in the center, but, you know, I personally like a good balance. So then, see, I've got the top of this one here, right? Top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that down to go with it. Now, I could have laid it flat, but let's say this was a 2-layer cake. That would be how you would take care of that dome on the top, right? And the cake would be done. So then I'm going to go ahead and do this one and put the other one on top, and then we'll look at icing the outside of it. Okay, so we got the top done. I got that next layer done. So now we're going to do the top. Yeah, and here's where we want to put on. You have options. We could do this by using a piping bag and just a simple big round tip and putting the icing all over it and then spreading it out, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pretend we don't have a piping bag, because you may not have a piping bag, and we're just going to put the icing on top just like such, and then we'll take our offset spatula, or you just use a knife or whatever, but what we'll do is we'll bring this down and then we'll just start basically throwing it off the edge. Now you could, depending on how you decorate, there is another option. We could take this super thin and do what's called a crumb topping, like that. See, I don't know if you can see it or not, but see how you can see the actual cake? And what that does is it collects and holds any of the like loose little bits that are on there. Not quite straight. Ugh. And then you put it in the fridge and let it harden, or firm up, not harden, but, and then you come back out and you put your top coat on it. But we're not going to do that. I'm not making this for anyone in particular, but for us to enjoy. Yeah, so we don't have to worry so much about the icing being perfect. And sometimes it's nice to do things like that, although, I mean, if you want to practice, you most certainly can. Practice does make perfect. And if you, even at that, if you just wanted to run a thin coat around it to get everything to hold before you came back over and did your second coat, you most certainly could. So, but yeah, that's all I've got on icing a cake. So let me go ahead and get this iced, and when I come back, we'll take a look at it and try a piece. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got her iced. I think she looks quite delicious. Now, I mean, you've got an endless amount of possibilities to what you could do to, as far as decorating this goes. You could toast up and crush some more pecans, put them on top. You could do a trim layer of icing, with a tip and a piping bag. I mean, you could really do anything with this bad boy, but this is what we wanted, right? Which is awesome. But let's cut us a piece and see how we turned out. This is a tall cake, that's for sure. We'll get this piece cut here. I know it's super moist. That is also for sure. Get the fork out of the way. Oh yeah, how beautiful is that? Once again, I am a horrible first cutter. I'm not gonna lie about that. I don't do well on first cut piece, which is okay. I mean, it's not like it's that big a deal. But there's what the inside of our cake looks like. I think that looks quite delicious myself. But the important piece is right here, which I also think looks quite delicious, right? Yeah, so we know it smelled great while it was baking. We know it looks good. I know by cutting it, and you'll find out if you make this, that, sorry, my face is 900 times its normal size, but and you'll find out if you make this cake, which I recommend that you give it a shot, even if it's not this recipe. Butter pecan pie cakes are amazing, but we know it's moist, we know it tastes, it smells good, we know it looks good, so let's give it that last bit and give it a try. What do you say? That that's a crazy good cake, my friends. It's moist, the crumb is tender. It's so well balanced, and that icing is off the hook. Give this bad boy a try. It wasn't horribly complicated to make. And high ratio cakes, I'm learning, are probably some of the easier cakes to make. But don't let it fool you. Just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not a good cake, because that is an amazing cake. And I've been dying for a butter pecan anything now for a minute. Much like the ice cream. Like I said, it's one of my favorite ice creams. And this could easily be one of my favorite cakes. So, definitely give this a try and let me know what you think. You can leave it down in the comments below. Like I said, you can jump on the Facebook page and Mr. Smith's Kitchen, the group page, and leave a comment there. If you make it, let us know about it. If you do something different, let us know about it. So next week, I have no idea. No idea at all, but I do know this. We will be making dinner together if you are so inclined to join me, and definitely doing a dessert. So we are continuing the progress down in the basement for about another week or so, I hope, depending on when this video comes out. Because as I don't know if I mentioned it, but my laptop has taken a turn and it will no longer charge, even though it's a brand new laptop. And so I don't know when I'll be able to edit this video, but you know, it's almost time to start gardening. We got boxes to build, and you know, we've already done the seeding, and we'll be planting the second week in May. So I want the garden to be prepared and ready to go. But anyhow, until next week for dinner and dessert, I love you. I love you very much, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You know, with all sincerity. I don't ever take you guys for granted. Tell somebody else you love them and that you love them very much. It's going to make them feel so good. It's going to make you feel good to tell them. And if you make one of these butter pecan cakes, they're going to know you care. It's going to start a great conversation. They'll probably even want the recipe themselves. So until next week, I'll see you then. All right? I love you. Talk to you later. Bye.